News Radio and Television. My name is Grace Wanfo. The state governor, Mr. Abiodun Oyebanji, says the state is ready to partner with the National Automotive Council to train the youth in electric vehicle and automotive software technologies. Oyebanji, who made the promise at Ikogo Ekiti, urged research institutions and private sector players to support local automotive production. The governor, represented by the Secretary to the State Government, Professor Habibat Adubiaru, reaffirmed the state's commitment to environmentally friendly practices and called on participants to engage actively for industry growth. The presidency has faulted the International Monetary Fund, IMF, over what it described as very harsh assessment of the Nigeria's economic reforms, inflation and poverty levels. In an interview, the special advisor to the president on economic affairs, Tokwe Fashua, praised the Bretton Woods institution for its observations. He warned that the IMF statement risked pitching the Nigerian people against the government, saying they lacked nuance and failed to consider the depth of the economic problems he inherited. It would be reported that the IMF had, in its report last week, titled How Nigeria Can Unleash Its Economic Potential, raised concerns over the country's persistently high inflation rate and slow impact on reforms. Also, the International Monetary Fund has said that Ghana was making headway in its economic reforms and debt restructuring, which the government embarked on 6 months ago. The IMF said this in a statement announcing the completion of the 4th review of the country's extended credit facility arrangement. That review allows for the release of the latest tranche towards the $3 billion rescue package. President John was sworn into office in January after the gold and cocoa-rich country experienced its worst economic turmoil in years. And from Kenya, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights has said that 31 people died on Monday's nationwide anti-government protests in the country. The body also reported 2 forced disappearances in the wake of the marches commemorating the 1999 uprising against autocratic rule in the East African nation. Clashes between protesters and police has erupted on the fringe of the capital, Nairobi, with the KNCHR accusing the police of cooperating with armed gangs in the wake of the violence. And still from Kenya, prosecutors say Kenya will press terrorism charges against 37 people arrested at deadly anti-government protests in late June. Initially held to mark a year since massive youth-led demonstrations against tax rises erupted in the East African country, the protest descended into chaos as young men clashed with police. In the wake of the demonstration, Kenya's police said that they had arrested 485 people for murder, terrorism, and rape, among other charges, adding that on June 30, there were 37 people still under active investigation. And from Tunisia, a Tunisian court has handed jail terms to 21 high-profile politicians and former top officials, including opposition leader and ex-parliament speaker Rachid Ghannouchi. The rulings on Tuesday are the latest move in President Kais Saied's widening crackdown on critics and political opponents. Ghannouchi, the leader of the Ennahda party, who had been in jail since 2023, was sentenced to up to 14 years in jail. Several others, including former Prime Minister Youssef Chahed and ex-Minister of Foreign Affairs Abdesalem Boukalaka, were sentenced in absentia to 35 years. This is Till 24 News Radio TV at Ekiti. For news, information, or comments, join our live streaming on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, Instagram, and TikTok handles. You can also like, share, and comment as well. And from Malaysia, we have a report that says Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has warned a global trade being weaponized against weaker countries as Southeast Asian ministers gather for a summit against the backdrop of United States President Donald Trump's tariff threats. Speaking at the opening of the annual meeting of ASEAN foreign ministers today, Anwar said that while powers had always shaped trade, it was today increasingly defining it. Anwar made this comment as U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was en route to Malaysia for his first visit to Asia as Washington's top diplomat. More updates will come your way after this break. Do stay with us. Glad to know that you're still there. This is still news update on 24 News Radio and Television. Over now to France. French President Emmanuel Macron has called for British support to recognize the state of Palestine and help defend Ukraine as he arrived in the United Kingdom for the first state visit by European leaders since Brexit. Macron, in a rare address to both houses of the British Parliament on Tuesday, celebrated the return of closer ties between France and the UK and said the two countries must work together to end excessive dependencies on the United States and China. The French president's 3-day trip came at the invitation of King Charles III. Macron was earlier greeted by the royal family, including heir to the throne Prince William and wife, Princess Catherine, before they traveled in horse-drawn carriages to Windsor Castle. And from the United States, U.S. President Donald Trump will welcome 5 African leaders to a White House with commerce and trade expected to feature prominently amongst a mixed bag of potential agenda items. The president of Senegal, Liberia, Guinea-Bissau, and Gabon, 5 nations located along Africa's Atlantic coast, will convene at Trump's behest. Officials from the countries have told newsmen that they expect talks to center on trade, investment, and security, amongst other topics, as they meet in the Executive Mansion State Dining Room. And still from the United States, the U.S. Supreme Court has cleared the way for President Donald Trump to begin carrying out mass firing of federal workers. The court, in an unsigned order, lifted a block imposed by a lower court on Trump's plans to potentially lay off tens of thousands of government employees. U.S. District Court Judge Susan Easton had paused the planned sweeping layoff in May on the ground that the moves required a green light from Congress. A coalition of labor unions, non-profit groups, and others had sued the Trump administration, arguing that it had exceeded its authority by ordering mass firing and agency reforms without congressional approval. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for 2 senior Taliban leaders, accusing them of crimes against humanity for persecuting women and girls. Judges said there were reasonable grounds to suspect Taliban Supreme Leader Habibullah Akhundzada and Chief Justice Abdul Hakim Haqqani of committing gender-based prosecution. The court said in a statement that while the Taliban had imposed certain rules and prohibitions on the population as a whole, they have specifically targeted girls and women by reason of their gender, depriving them of fundamental rights and freedoms. And now from the world of sports. Chelsea's new signing Pedro scored a stunning brace as they defeated Fluminense 2-0 in the first semi-final of the Club World Cup on Tuesday night. Blues boss Enzo gave Pedro his first start for the club following his arrivals from Brighton this summer. The Brazilian scored a goal in each half against his boyhood club to send Chelsea into the final of the FIFA Club World Cup. Chelsea will now take on the winner of the duel between French giants Paris Saint-Germain and one of the best clubs in Spain, Real Madrid, in the final of this year's Club World Cup. And that's a wrap on the news update on 24 News Radio and Television. Keep listening to the station for more programs will be coming your way after this segment. My name is Grace Hua. Do enjoy the rest of your evening.
Enugu to Ilori, all across Nigeria, we bring you news and information that will make your day. We are news. We are 24 News Radio TV. From Abuja to Lagos, Sokoto to Port Harcourt, Enugu to Ilori, all across Nigeria, we bring you news and information that will make your day. We are news.